The Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we call the roll, please?
Augustinelli.
Here.
LaCumber.
Here.
Dual.
Here.
Schmuckel.
Here.
McManus here. Korn.
Here. Barchef is excused.
Warshev is excused.
Thank you.
Kind of awkward.
I'm Chuck Korn, Garfield Township
Nice to meet you.
Supervisor.
I'm Denise Schmuckel, Garfield Township Trustee.
Good afternoon.
I'm Molly Augustinelli, also a trustee.
Hello. Stephen Duell, also a trustee. Good afternoon.
Chloe McCumber, treasurer.
Lainey McManus, clerk.
Hello.
It's your turn to tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, I think you all know me. We've had the privilege of working together for probably 10 years now, going back to my time when I was a lieutenant for Garfield Township. You know, I knew I was interested in this position like 9 years ago. When I sat right there, stood right there in front of the board, watching everybody up here who was making decisions on behalf of the taxpayer. It was a moment of like pride that the citizens who elect you, emergencies, and just as a captain, you know, I'm creating my budget. We're going through right now for the future, you know, and I've got to figure out what I want to buy, what's going to come up in December of next year, you know. So it's challenging, but I feel that opportunity has prepared me to lead the township in the area of budgets and in many other aspects. Another thing too about me is I appreciate the culture here at the township that I've seen over the last 9 years. When I took over the jail, I had a real challenge of changing the culture. I feel if I was to be hired by the township, I am just going to come into a culture that would be an easy transition for me, because the culture is what I would cultivate, and it's already been done. I feel like it would be a something that I would just be able to come in and work with staff. And a lot of times when new supervisors come in, they turn things upside down, they create anxiety and things like that. I think when I came into the jail, the staff felt a sense of comfort, and I feel if I was to be picked for this position, I'm just going to enhance the staff that's already here and the culture that I want to be part of.
All right, thank you very much. First question, describe the role of a township manager and how it should work with the Board of Trustees.
About things, you know, that maybe get pushed off to future meetings, it's my job to do investigating to figure out your answers. My job as a manager is to oversee HR matters, which I have a significant amount of experience from the sheriff's office in dealing with unions, hiring, firing, training, developing people. That would be my responsibility here. I also would be responsible for developing relationships with stakeholders in the community. You know, along with the supervisor, I would be the face of the department and be interacting with the community. I also would be, you know, managing the fleet of our vehicles, overseeing the staff in the various departments like the parks, planning department, zoning department. And those are the main things that a manager would do.
What is your communication style, and how will it ensure that there is a free flow of information to the Board of Trustees?
I've been told that I talk too much, and the reason why my style is, I'm very communicative, and I always want to give a lot of information so people can make informed decisions. And I feel like I don't want to get into a position where if I don't communicate enough, that somebody isn't informed and something adverse would come out of a decision. I feel that my communication with the board would be open and transparent and would be regular. One thing I would want to do, and I've kind of determine what your needs are to make decisions over the 4 years that I've been a trustee is, what is important to you? How much information is important to you? And because I don't want to get into the weeds and give too much and get us off track. I know some people my former sheriff just give me a little bit of details and he wants to move on. There's other people that want to hear a lot of stuff. So I need to figure out what your expectations are as far as communication to make sure I meet those. I feel at the board meetings, the communication has to be clear and concise and timely. If there's something that is a problematic or issue that comes up with the township and it doesn't get communicated quickly, that creates a problem. So the communication needs to be timely. I also want the communication to be in many forms. As you know me, I'm big on data and details. So data, spreadsheets, visual information. So because we're all different in the way we receive information, I want to be able to make sure that I effectively communicate to everybody in the different areas. And it's important too that sometimes, I'm not the most intelligent person, and I think the lay person can understand what I'm trying to communicate, but it's important that not only the board understands what's going on in meetings, but also the public who may be here watching from home. The communication needs to be to where they understand it as well.
All right, describe your experiences recruiting and onboarding new staff members.
I will let you know, as a sergeant and lieutenant at the sheriff's office, I participated in interview panels. I did not organize them, but I was asked to ask questions and evaluate applicants. As a captain in the detective bureau, just read the paper. Corrections is always short-staffed. And it seems like over the last 5 years, we were just there with, with full FTEs, and then all of a sudden something happened where you lose a bunch of people, and it's like cyclical. So it is constant reviewing applications. It's constant determining who you want to interview, setting up the interviews, getting the interview panels together. It is a lot of work. And, you just recently we had 8 candidates that we interviewed. 5 didn't show up, or we were going to interview, 5 didn't show up. 2 of them were no, and 1 person in the background got failed out. So right now we're down like 9 people. And it's important for us to recruit good quality candidates and then put them through a good training program, and also be responsible for their ongoing education and development, so that way they can be successful officers, by themselves. We also, at the county level, utilize ZipRecruiter and Indeed. There's ways that you can reach people through those sources. There's a way that those come right into our HR system, to where I can see people's applications and review them. And then we set up recently, as yesterday, our HR department's going to help us start to screen people, pre-screen them. And we provided the list of questions and a rating system that our HR staff will go through that. They'll screen people, and then if they pass that process, then they'll come to us to do interviews. So another thing too, as you know, as a lieutenant, it's always in the community, so that the public can see us and gain trust, and maybe one day would want to work with us. So it's important that you engage the public to go to job fairs, or go to colleges where they have, people that are graduating school, like somebody who may be going to achieve a zoning a certification. It's more like law enforcement that would do this, where we go to job fairs at police academies and corrections academies, and you just talk about your agency. They get to see the equipment that you wear, explain how your professionalism, and then you hope that those people one day want to work for you. So you kind of got to be creative. And when all else fails and you want to be assertive, there's nothing wrong with approaching somebody and trying to recruit them from another organization and explain why it's beneficial for them to come to work for you and what you have to offer. So that would be, in the end, you don't like to do that, but if that has to happen, that's an opportunity.
Okay, what are some of the most important factors to consider when managing growth?
So economic development obviously has a lot to do with growth. I guess I'd like to answer that with an example. So if you want to draw businesses into our area, big businesses that may hire a lot of people, you're also going to need the housing to go with it. You're also potentially going to need to extend infrastructure to business locations to attract businesses. And, McCray Hill would be a great example. We upgraded some equipment, so hopefully the infrastructure in that area could draw businesses. Well, that's going to increase the amount of people who come here, and there's going to be greater needs, for them to live, for them to, go to certain stores. So I think you really kind of need to look at the big picture. Is if you're going to if your goal is to draw a bunch of businesses, and you right now don't have housing, which we know that's one of our challenges, you've got to make a decision to add more housing, because it's not going to work. And and that just creates more work, because you potentially have to change your zoning to allow more flexibility, increasing housing. So when you look at growth, you have to look at multiple facets of the community and have a big picture approach to it. I don't think you could just say, hey, we want to have more businesses come here, because there's so many other things that are affected by that. So I think effective planning is the key when considering that.
Please describe your leadership style.
Precipitative is my leadership style. When I came to the jail, I was an outsider. And believe me, there were people whose jobs I took, people who had worked there for 15 years who wanted to promote and run the jail. I didn't realize that was such an issue until maybe a year or so into my time there, that people were really hurt about it. But I mean, I chose to advance, and I guess the fact that it would hurt their feelings wouldn't change my decision. So when I got there, I knew very little about corrections. So I needed the employees more than they needed me. I needed them to help educate me on how corrections ran. It was really hard to make decisions when you knew very little. Now, I try to educate myself as much as I can. For instance, I went down to Kent County Jail and met with the lieutenant there, who actually runs the Red Wings camp up here, Lieutenant Case. And he gave me a 2-hour tour of the jail, so I could see operations and ask him questions. And that's something that I was able to gain knowledge and bring into my job. And I really relied on the employees. And I felt like, and I believe this, is that if you're an autocratic personality or leadership style, that tends to turn a lot of people off, and they won't be willing to follow you. I feel like that is good in war, in the military, when you need to bark orders and people need to respond. But the more that I feel like you can involve people in processes, there is buy-in and there is appreciation that you're including them in decisions and what they may ultimately be doing in the future. Now, that involves, like with my sergeants, we do touch-based meetings all the time. When we want to change a process due to inefficiencies, we pull them in, we talk about all the goals of changing something, why we'd want to do it. We get their input, we consider their input. A lot of times their input's more important than what I have to say, especially when I first started, because they worked there a lot longer than I have. So you really have to take what they have seriously, and a lot of times you put it into practice. Sometimes when you allow employees to participate in those decisions, they're not mindful of liability, ramifications, the cost to the budget. They don't think about those things at that level. So that's where I have to come in and maybe say, well, that's a great idea, and I appreciate your willingness to participate, but it's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. Can we do something different? So I always try to find a common ground. In the end, I reserve the right to make the ultimate decision what we're going to do, but I like to involve the staff because I feel like they're so valuable and knowledgeable and actually can help me make a better informed decision.
Describe your level of experience with finance and accounting.
So not so much in accounting. I was never great at math. One reason why I chose law enforcement, because there was very little math, only usually in accident reconstruction. I chose it because of public service, ultimately. But as a lieutenant in the sheriff's office, I was charged with organizing contracts for services, and we had a certain dollar per hour rate and a minimum 3-hour time frame that people had to contract with us. So I had to determine, how long a certain activity was going to take, and I had to arrange the contract and figure out the cost to the vendor, the organization or the vendor, actually organization, and enter into a contract with them, and then work with administrative staff to get an invoice sent to the organization. Fast forward to my job as a captain. I oversee my budget, which is $7.5 million, and I don't start when I get the email from county administration that says, okay, it's time to work on your budget. I'm actually working on my budget throughout the year because I think of things, that would be great for next year, so I make notes. And when it's time to sit down and actually do your budget, you refer to all the things that you've written down in the past and things that you want to accomplish in the future that may come up at that time. And you put the budget together. You submit. We submit it through a workday program, adaptive planning, and the board reviews it in the end. Next week, I have to go in front of the board for a special meeting to explain why is it that I'm asking for a new employee. So that involves doing a ton of homework and making an argument why it's a good use of taxpayer money for that position. So that's something that I'll be preparing tomorrow and early in the week for next week. The budget, you got to consider things like, I have a medical budget that's over $1 million. And what does healthcare costs look like annually? They always go up. So I have to really pay attention to that. I have to pay attention for food when you feed the inmates. It would be no different than in the township where you're wanting to work on a project for a building. Building costs, what are those? What are they going to be 6 months, 1 year down the road when you actually start the project, when all those costs go up? So you have to really anticipate and plan for the increases and put that in your budget so that way you don't fall short in the next year. So I've always, the budgets I put together have always worked out very well, and I feel like it takes somebody who's a great planner to ensure that you're successful in the planning part of a budget and the oversight in spending the funds in following years.
Have you stayed current in municipal best practices?
So the way I stay current is internet searching. Also periodicals like magazines that we get from MTA, we get those regularly, and it's important that you review them because they educate you on the hottest topics. For this various position, I remember getting that article, as a township manager, the right time today. And so I try to stay current by doing that. I also feel it's important, like in my role, I do a lot of networking and partner relationship building because you learn a lot of information from other people, like the MTA conference. Other people who you will interact in the community will share information with you. And so those relationships are not only important to get things done, but you also learn a lot from other people. So attending conferences, I do a lot on the internet, to be honest with you. There's a lot of data and information out there to educate yourself and keep yourself informed and updated.
Can you provide, an example when you needed to gather input from different stakeholders with different perspectives?
Trying to tie it to a township. I'll give you an example. In a question that I answered in this process, it was a matter of public safety in the soccer tournaments. And as you know, every spring and every fall, even with lacrosse tournaments, we have a ton of people who come to that area, and it's really difficult to support that density of people in the cars and the traffic. So in order to problem solve that, how do we make it safer? I had to work with I had to first figure out, okay, who owns the property, who has control over it? It's a county park. And they allow T-Bays, I believe, to lease it for $1. So you have a county department who's involved, you have a nonprofit who has an interest, and you also have the sheriff's office who has an interest, and you have the county road commission who has an interest. So I had to convene many meetings because it was important to me to solve that problem, and I worked with all those entities. And in the end, because really the T-Bays just wants to put on a tournament, and they want to make money to further their kids learning soccer, right, and providing the resource. They don't want to spend money on traffic signs and law enforcement to direct traffic. So sometimes they don't understand the importance of what I'm trying to accomplish. So you have to very professionally just be very detailed I'm trying to think, effective in your communication. And so a diverse group of stakeholders, communication was the key, explaining the importance of it, that not only is the motoring public safe, but all of your attendees are safe too when they come to and from. And if there should be an accident, their public service has to get there to render aid. So you just lay the big picture out, and they tend to get it, and we're able to solve the problem.
How do you support and reward a high-performance team?
You can support a team with training. I have high, sometimes I wonder if my expectations are too high, to be honest with you, but they're really high, so I have to check myself. I'm not perfect, I just have a really strong work ethic. So when I ask people to do things, I got to be mindful of that I'm not asking them to do things that they can't do. But it's important for me that if I want somebody to accomplish something, that they have the tools to do it. And if they don't, let's get them the tools, whether it's through training, attending conferences, having them work with colleagues or partners. I feel like if your end result is this widget has to be made this way, that you have to set up the people who are ultimately responsible for that for success. And I feel like the best way to do it is with training and development and support. And also oversight is important. You could set somebody on a mission, and if you don't provide oversight, there's a good chance that it's not going to meet the goal at the end. Or a problem may come up that wasn't addressed, and it may not be the end result that you want. So there has to be oversight as well.
Okay, what types of community and economic development projects have you worked on in the past, and what were the outcomes they brought about?
I feel like the experience with that question is related to my time at the township. So in all of that, economic development projects would come through our planning department or through developers who want to come to the area. So I've never been the driving force regarding that, but I've made decisions relating to it. Right now I think of one of our biggest challenges, housing. So how do you fix it? I think it's kind of neat to think out of the box. Like, for instance, the mall. The mall seems to be a dying thing. Malls all over the country seem to be a dying thing. So how can you change that? It's a commercial district right now, so change its use to put high density residential in there. I was in Arizona recently in the Catalina foothills, and they have pretty high-end stores in this town center. And they also have eateries. They have a grocery store that's like Oriana's but on steroids. And it supports the Catalina foothills community. It's kind of neat the way where it's located. And I look at it like downtown Traverse City has a lot of neat little eateries that people like to go to. Why can't we do that here? Why can't you build a venue that is very quaint, very neat, but it takes creativity to do that, and it also takes a developer who's willing to go that direction too, right? So there's a lot of moving parts to it. But I feel like there has to be creativity. We have to, we don't know everything. I don't know how often members of the township go to different communities and visit, learn about good things that are being done. I'm sure that they do that, and then bring ideas back and let's try to make them happen. You know, what do they like about the bits and pieces of all these things that are happening in various communities? And then what can we bring back here and how can we do it? To me, that's exciting, and that's something that I would have staff do or I would like to do. Because it's about, I feel like my role as a captain of the sheriff department, as a mayor of this township, is making it better than it was yesterday. And whether it's efficient, whether it's through zoning, but making it better.
How have you brought people together to work on a difficult issue?
I'd like to use COVID as an example. Started at the jail in the summer of 19, and in the spring of 20 is when this deadly, unknown, invisible thing came upon us. And we're all gonna die, right? Didn't everybody have that feeling when you went to the grocery store and you didn't wipe down your plastic bags that you were gonna die? I mean, a lot of people felt that way. Well, I was tasked in the jail with keeping my employees safe. I was tasked with keeping 150 inmates safe, was something that we knew nothing about. And I also have rules and regulations that I have to follow on a day-to-day basis, just in corrections. And then when the Department of Health and also the Department of Corrections come out with a whole new set of guidelines that you must follow to mitigate the impacts of this pandemic, doing this with knowing very little about the job, I had to pull a lot of people together to help me put a plan together to mitigate undesirable outcomes. And that was really challenging because I'm usually the one who's confident in control of what's going to happen, but I had to rely on everybody else's expertise. And we had meetings, regular meetings, talk through what we're going to do, how are we going to make it happen. It was so difficult to comply. But I used the resources that were available to me and my employees, and they all convened together as a group, and then they all needed their help in effectively executing the game plan. And when you have to do that with up to 35 officers, we didn't have that many at the time, we have 30 officers who all have to change on a dime what they're doing day to day, because typically employees like routine. Everybody likes routine. We're all like kids. And all of a sudden, now they come into work, which is a job that's already difficult, and now we're going to ask you to do this. So that was hard even to motivate them to do the things that had to happen. But in the end, with their help, we were able to put a plan together to mitigate the impacts of COVID, only sending one individual to the hospital. And if you look at the records around the country, there's a lot of people who died in jails. But I truly believe because of the efforts of my team, we were able to come through that successfully. And one thing that I was really proud about too is the state inspectors got to know me pretty well and understood my level of detailedness, my communication skills, and the fact that I'm a very good planner. And they saw my plan because we had to submit it to the Department of Corrections, and I was one of the very first jails that did that. And the inspector said, "Hey, do you mind if we share this with other jails around the state?" I'm like, "Absolutely." We don't want somebody to have to recreate the wheel. Granted, each jail's different in how they operate and their capabilities, but if somebody can have a starting point, let them have it. And you know what? There were a lot of proud moments as the team solved that, and we were able to help people all over the state, really. So.
Describe a time when you had to make a judgment call on a project concerning how the resources, financial and otherwise, were used.
Well, right now, again, I'll use the jail. We need a new jail really bad. And in a new jail can cost up to $20 million. I could go in front of the board today and argue why that we should have one, but as you know, it's very difficult. It's a lot of money. How are you going to fund it? And also, I've learned that people who are stakeholders in the community have differing opinions on how jail should be operated. Some people feel it should be punitive. Other people feel that it should be restorative. So it's kind of a balancing act, you know. And the Board of Commissioners who ultimately decide on spending the money, they have to listen to their constituents. Not all of them are supportive of a jail. So how do I improve things in the short term and through budgeting? It's not perfect, but in my budget, in the capital improvement fund, actually it's not in my budget, it's in our facilities department budget, we put $250,000 in there last year. So that way this year I could make improvements, and I call them Band-Aid solutions. You know, you got to do with what you have to work with. And you don't always have the resources that are necessary, and it's not always a priority of other people. So, you know, I've learned to use what I have and hopefully buy some time for a few years, or maybe even 5, or probably even longer before we even have a jail. But, you know, you concede and say, okay, we're just gonna live with this right now, and then hopefully down the road we can find a way to build a jail. So, and also you know, you don't want to throw, was it good money after bad? Can't remember the saying, but you know, you also got to weigh off, is $250,000 worth spending? You know, at what point are you going to build a new jail? You know, is that worth spending that kind of money in that area? I mean, I felt like it is, so we're moving forward with it. But
How do you build strong relationships?
communication and trust. I think it's important to show people that you communicate well, you listen well, and that they can trust you. And with those two things comes respect. And I feel like in my career I've done a ton of that, because you can't always do things yourself, and you need other people to go along with you, and that's how I feel like that's the best way to do it. In my role as lieutenant, I was in charge of our community policing program, as you know, and we interacted with so many community partners, and in a way that we needed their help to ultimately achieve certain goals. And it wasn't about using them, it was about the partnership and working together to solve problems. So, and I do the same thing today at a higher level as a captain, working with local nonprofits, community organizations, activist groups who care about what goes on at the jail. When COVID happened, I kicked all my nonprofit providers who provide services in the jail, I kicked them out because of COVID. We had to. And so what did I do? You know, within a month, we were doing weekly meetings. We were doing weekly meetings because nobody knew when they were going to come back in the jail. So let's stay together, let's communicate, let's work through this. Well, we decided after COVID that, you know, weekly was too much, but we meet every month still. And we also discuss things outside of meetings, whether it's through email or phone calls or meeting together. So I feel if you want to be successful in upper level management, you have to be able to build relationships. And it starts with communication and trust and respect. That is earned, not inherent or given automatically.
What are policy and program areas that can help support and manage growth?
Our master plan is the roadmap, you know, that we follow here when we're making decisions. And in our master plan, it also mentions our strategic plan, all of our visions. And I feel as a manager and as a board, I feel like you have to balance all those things, because you don't want to put too much effort into non-motorized trails and let housing, you know, the housing need go by the wayside, because that takes a long time to develop housing. So I think you really have to pay attention to the master plan and balance where you're putting your efforts and your funds over time. And I feel like there has to be as you move forward, you reprioritize what you're putting your effort towards. So it's a constant paying attention to the master plan, updating it. We just approved it in July. I think you constantly are reviewing that because the needs and priorities of the township could change, and I think you just need to follow that. That's your policy. That's our policy to work from.
Can you explain in detail your involvement and knowledge, your involvement and knowledge that you have had with municipal water and sewer systems?
Not proud of this, but way back when I was a community police officer in East Bay Township, the Record Eagle said, "Woman snarled by sprinkler." I don't know if you guys ever heard that. Okay. Well, same restriction. I was an East Bay community police officer at the time, and they ran into the same restriction issues that we have currently going on. And somebody up in the Holiday Hills area was running their sprinklers all the time. They weren't doing them on the odd or even days. So the DPW had asked for our assistance in writing them a ticket. So I wasn't proud of that, but I was doing as I was asked by the DPW, who had tried to get the person to comply. So I understand that we only have so much water to go around, and that particular restriction, why it was put into place. That was my only contact or exposure at that time, but a lot of my time regarding sewer and water has been at the board level. And I can remember when I first started, Jennifer, who's here in the audience, asking her, because it's our job to manage it. It's our job to oversee it, make sure it works. And we have to plan for its maintenance. We have to plan for when something goes wrong with it, what do we do? And I felt as a board member, I don't know much about this. So, and I'm responsible if something bad happens, and I don't like to be put in those positions. And so I've understood that, we've got this network of sewer lines that run through the township. We have a network of water lines. The Board of Public Works administers our policies related to it, and the spending of fixing fire hydrants. So I believe Supervisor Korn is a member of that committee, so he makes decisions on behalf of the township there for spending. But we rely on our civil engineer, Jennifer, to educate us as to the condition of our pipes in the ground, our pump stations, and our infrastructure. We really rely on her and her company to keep us updated and informed, and that allows us to plan financially, what's coming down the pipe, what needs to be replaced, and then we could budget and plan accordingly to replace things. But other than that, I've had limited experience, but I feel at the township level, we rely on the civil engineer hugely to make sure our system is running as it should for the citizens.
Okay, how will you approach learning or understanding departments or the positions that you will oversee?
If I were to be selected for the position, I'm in a unique position because I've been the lieutenant for Garfield Township and on the board for 4 years, so that's 9 years. I've got to interact with a lot of the departments already and the people who are in those roles, and I even had an opportunity to hire many of them because I was on their interview panel as I'm on the personnel committee. So what I like to do is sit down with each individual on a personal level, and I would do this, just to allow them to get to know me and to figure out what's important to them, and what would they like to see in the future if I were to take over as manager. What would you like to see? Because every supervisor and manager has a different set of priorities and the way they do things. So I would build a relationship right off the bat, and then have ongoing dialogue going forward. So that way we can, that relationship's important. Sometimes if you aren't close with your employees and things happen that they can get out of whack, or fester and create problems. So as long as you create a relationship with them early on, you're able to avoid these headaches down the road. I have an open door policy at the sheriff's office, and a lot of times my administrative team and supervisory team will say, you need to shut your door because you can't get things done. But I want my staff to know that they can come talk to me about anything and whenever, and also that their time is important to me, that even if it's on my day off, I will come in and talk to you. And there's been times over my career where issues have come up, and I have come in on my weekend to meet with people, to answer questions, to alleviate issues and misinformation. So I think that supervisor-employee relationship is huge. And it starts from day one.
What part of the position that you are applying for is your weakest knowledge or link?
I don't know that I have one that's the weakest. I feel that I have general knowledge, but not as much knowledge as I would like to have for confidence and when I'm overseeing the operation. So, law enforcement, I've got a great history of that, and I've seen what the sheriff department does for us. On the Metro Fire Board, I work with the chief and on the board. Well-run operations. I don't need to spend time there. Zoning is no different than law enforcement. You're just enforcing the zoning ordinance where I enforce criminal law. That's very simple to me. I feel like I would spend a lot of time in elections, even though I was a poll worker, and that was my attempt to gain knowledge. So I would want to gain more knowledge in that. Also, the Treasurer's Department and the Planning Department. So I feel like spending times with those different departments would benefit me. Also regarding sewer and water, I envision myself sitting or jumping in a car with Jennifer and saying, okay, let's go drive around the township. Let's fill me with knowledge and information, because I think that's important as well, that I expand my knowledge base in that area.
Thank you.
That concludes our question, and of course, we offer you an opportunity to ask us questions.
Wow, that went fast. Really, I don't have any questions. I'd rather use my time for kind of a wrap up. Working with the township for 9 years, I've learned a lot, built relationships. I have a good understanding of how the operation works because of that. The sheriff department and the fire department, those are big budget items that we have to keep track of, and I have a great understanding of how they work. The fire department is ran just like a law enforcement agency. You have unions. I'm saying this because I've never ran a fire department, but they're very similar. They wear uniforms, we wear uniforms. We carry guns, they use hoses. But the actual day-to-day operation is very similar. So I feel that in a manager role, overseeing the fire department would be very simple for me. I don't think I have any questions. When I've had questions, I try to get them answered and educate myself and increase my knowledge base and my confidence. But I have comments to wrap up is all, I guess.
Do any of the board members have any follow-up questions they'd like to ask? Wrap it up.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank everybody for showing the confidence in me and allowing me to be at this stage in the process. So thank you for that. It's exciting. An opportunity to potentially continue public service. I've done it for 29 years with the sheriff department, and to be able to serve your community where you live. I'm kind of whittling it down from 100,000 people in the county to the 20 that are here. So I feel like in my current role, I'm spread thin. I feel like I won't be spread as thin in a manager role. There'll be more of me to go around, and I feel like I would have a greater impact by shrinking the size of my responsibilities. I feel like living here for 40 years, I already know the culture of the community. I know the values. The values are no different than our vision, right? Those are the community who said, this is what's important to me. And we all, I feel, agree with them. You know, as you think about every day we make decisions, there's very little contention. We not very often have people in the audience who are complaining or upset about what we're doing. So that's a pretty good, tight community. That can't be said for other communities around the area who sometimes have a lot of issues. So I have a lot of pride in what I do, and I put 150% in everything I do every day. And I hope someday that I can, after this process is over, is take it from the sheriff department and put it in the township. When I come here to get materials out of my mailbox, I walk in on a weekend with pride thinking, this would be a lot of fun. This would be very neat if I could come here every day, you know? Leave my house, 5-minute drive, and come work here, 40 hours a week and spend time making this even better and enhancing what we already do. I feel like I said earlier, I fit in the culture. I know the staff, when you tend to bring somebody in from the outside, creates anxiety. I feel like I would be a good fit, an easy transition for them, because I think we have to be mindful of that as well. And I've been part of a lot of the things that we put into place. I've told my supervisors at the jail, if I leave someday, it's important for me that there isn't a beat that's skipped, because you have all participated in what we do, and you've all built it. So there isn't going to be this big void if I were to leave someday. It's just going to continue on. There'll just be a different person at the top. So I feel if I was to come into this position, I have interjected myself over the last 10 years in many facets of it, that it's going to be pretty seamless. You know, there is a learning curve, not very steep, and I think as you consider this difficult, well, maybe not difficult decision, or this important decision, you consider everything that I said, consider the public service career that I've had in the community, what I've done for the township, and I hope there's value in that, and you can see that if I'm selected, that I would be a good manager for the township, for the citizens, and for the employees who work here.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we can take a 10-minute break. Anybody would like to get a glass of water? Yes.
provide some opening remarks, focusing on his interest in the position and highlights of transformation.
Redevelopment Ready Communities program wouldn't have allowed it to happen that quick. So you need to have flexibility. And that was a great success. They had a waiting list before the place opened. They had a waiting list. It's gorgeous. And she's going to build another one. Of course, I already talked about O'Reilly's and Dollar General. They serve a purpose. Dollar General serves a purpose. A lot of residents, if you look at housing and the cost of living up there, it's pretty high, remote, but also the poverty level. There's quite a bit of poverty up there. So the Dollar General was a need, and it does serve a purpose.
Excuse me, how have you brought people together to work on a difficult issue?
Again, it involved food. Medical marijuana. The Village of Caledonia, before I got there, went out and did a postcard, unofficial, how would you feel about this? And actually, the responses they got back was more people wanting to allow the medical marijuana, the marijuana facilities, let's just leave it at that. And the council had an open house, had a couple open houses. And you just got to go in with an open mind and without a predetermined outcome. Because you're having a public hearing to listen. You can't you got to listen to all of your sources, and the best source of information are your constituents. So have public open house, again, food, pizza, cookies, it works, all of it. Coffee. And that's the thing I found, have a coffee pot in the office, always ready to go for anybody that stopped in. Throw that in there, I see a little grin. But, you got PASER ratings, and things weren't going good locally. And I understand there's some distension locally here on a couple projects that are being dealt with MDOT. If you ever have a problem with MDOT and you don't think you're getting the straight answers, you go higher. If somebody comes to me and says, Jeff, I don't think you're helping me, you are my bosses. You can go higher. So we went to the state. We talked to a couple state reps, and M37 is going to be happening someday. Of course, MDOT wasn't happy about it, so the environmental study, the archaeologists have to come in and look for bones and mastodons. They have to do a sound study. This highway has been under the approach for Gerald R. Ford Airport for decades, but yet we have to do a sound study to see if the increased impact of electric cars going down the road is going to be harmful to wildlife and people when jets flying over isn't really considered. But, going to MDOT and talking to them on a project, sometimes you got to go over their heads a little bit, but be polite about it, be courteous about it, and let your employers know. If something was going on where the road commission wasn't acting responsive, I'd come to you folks and say, hey, I'm going to these meetings and this, and some of you may know the road commissioner a little bit better than I, and you can give me some guidance on how to approach that.
How do you build strong relationships?
I use Zoom. I don't care for Zoom. I like to meet people face to face. Build that relationship, because I'm going to tell you, body language says so much. And you can tell so much. I was a special deputy for Alpena County Sheriff's Department. I ran his dive team, and so I got to partake in some of the training, and that was key for a lot of things. But you get to read people, and you can't really do that with a phone call and text. For goodness sakes, if you use the wrong punctuation, you're in trouble. So I like to go in and meet people and keep in touch, keep in contact. Hey, how's your day? Hey, this is my first month on the job here in Garfield Township. Anything going on that I should know about? Just keep in touch with people and let them know you're there and available. You need to be available to these people. So to have no hesitation reaching out or keeping you in the loop. Because there's a lot of information flying around out there that doesn't make it in the Ticker or the Record Eagle. And, keep the ear to the ground and share the information with your staff and your employers. I mean, this alternative homeless center that's being talked about, I'm glad that it was discovered, accidentally I'm told. Steve was showing me on how it sort of got stumbled upon. And, it's glad. As soon as he found that out, he spread the word. And I'm sure you folks know the location and everything else. But because it's important to keep you folks informed. I don't call when there's little things going on, but I'll call the supervisor and say, hey, just so you know, this business is going to go out of business, is going out of business. They shut their doors this morning. And do I need to let everybody know? Because sometimes the supervisor wants to keep that connection, say, I'll let everybody know, or I'll email everybody. That needs to be established in the future.
What are policy and program areas that can help support and manage growth?
Well, keeping a current master plan helps, recreation plan helps, but also working with the Road Commission and MDOT on future road improvements. Keep those things, information together, and keep it local, because a developer wants one-stop shopping, and that's what Steve and I were talking about. I was on the website, and I loved a section of your website where it took me into CAD, computer-aided drafting design, and there's a lot of great information he's put on there, and I understand he and another gentleman have been working on it, but it's great, it's there. And the thing is, if people want one, I shouldn't have to go to Road Commission, I shouldn't have to search out all this information. I want to go to one website. And I'm going to tell you, I applaud you folks. In doing my homework for this interview, I had some difficulties. Well, yesterday they were also working on the website yesterday, but a lot of the information I didn't think was current, and finding some of the information wasn't any good, and I'm glad you folks saw that, and I see you're taking steps to fix that, and that's wonderful, because people that want to put a business in around does not want to have to make 20 different phone calls to find 10 different contacts. They want one-stop shopping. Did I answer your question?
Kinda.
Can you explain in detail your involvement and knowledge that you have had with municipal water and sewer systems?
Well, when I went to Nagani, it was a sewer system. We shut down our wastewater plant, buried, blasted a channel, and put a pump to pump it next door to Ishpeming. And we invested a little money into Ishpeming's wastewater plant to process our poo, putting it bluntly. And it was more cost effective to do that than you couldn't rehab our plant anymore. It was build a new plant. So that was quite a project, went on for 2 years. That was under the Recovery Act, Obama's recovery plan, and we did that project in 2 years. And in the UP, you do a lot of water lines, a lot of times not by choice. Ironically, in the UP, my second year there was the first time I saw a wooden water main. They make it like a barrel, but it was interesting. So yes, so water projects in the UP are either blasting rock or digging sand. And there's a lot of water projects that boil water orders. I was tempted to go after my water and wastewater license, but I just didn't do that. Streets, transportation became my thing, and parks. In Nagani, we had 14 parks and that we maintained. And in Caledonia, the village of Caledonia owned 0, although we did host a large county park and a large township park within the village. But water, and if you're going to do a street, do what's below it. And that's the thing. The projects, I was checking out the project downtown along the water, And yeah, if you're going to put in new curb and gutter and streets, you might as well put in everything below it new too. And that's a very smart thing. And also allow for future expansion. A lot of conduits going underneath the street from one side to the other is beneficial.
Okay, how will you approach learning and or understanding the departments and positions that you'll oversee?
Assessing, I am fairly familiar with in Nagani. We did have an assessor and an assessing department. So I'm pretty familiar with assessing. I'm pretty familiar with them all because I also served as pretty much a planner. And in Caledonia, we did have a firm that acted as our planner. The only thing is they acted as a planner for a bunch of communities. So you end up wearing a planner hat to keep prodding them along and offer different things also. Because you need boots on ground in that community. You don't always get that. Just like a building inspector. We also contracted out for our building inspections because finding a building inspector, we had as much problems finding them as you are. It's just tough. So we actually ended up contracting out for a company to do all of our inspections. But doesn't mean I didn't get called in. I was actually the zoning administrator, and I was the zoning administrator in Caledonia and Nagani. So I do have experience there. Parks, 14 parks, I do have experience there with DNR grants. You've just recently acquired a beautiful piece of land. And I was asking what the plans are, if there's any cross-country ski trail plans or snowshoeing plans or things like that. And I guess you folks have a lot to do there. So, but planning, pretty much I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with everything because I wore the hat as the clerk. I did not do elections in Caledonia, but I was the clerk in Nagani, and I was involved with all aspects there.
What part of the position you are applying for is your weakest knowledge or link?
Weakest knowledge and link. And that's local information. And that's where I turn to the staff and you folks. I don't have the history. You folks have the history. I can look back in minutes, I can look back in budgets. And going back to the financial question, since I've been in government, I have never had to write a deficit elimination plan on a budget that I developed and managed. But the information, who do I go to from here? It's just like Mr. Korn, I would be bending his ear. Okay, I'm going to be going to these meetings. What do I need to know? What activities are they doing? Are they off track? Sometimes you have a group that's been given a task and they sort of get off track a little bit and they need to get back on course and finish those tasks. So, and a lot of it will be meeting, Steve was a great help down there because I have some acquaintances with the DeVos family and Fox Motors again. It's like I knew something was going on up here and he showed me the latest acquisitions for the commercial truck property and that. But it's getting the local information, and that is my greatest weakness. And that's where total immersion comes in. I ask a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions. The day I stop learning will be the day I die.
Well, that concludes our questions. And now we can give you a moment to summarize or perhaps ask us questions.
Oh, I feel like that time went quickly. Well, you're going to find I do like to talk. And I have done my best to try to keep things under control here because I am an information junkie. And I share a lot of information and garner a lot of information. I watch a lot of Discovery Channel and TED Talks and different things like that. But I'm always learning, and I enjoy that. And it's not just government. Like I said, I'm a Gen Xer. My wife's a Gen Xer. She works for the community schools in Caledonia. I won't, well, she's a Gen Xer. I can go as far as to say that. I do have a 15-year-old daughter. And my 15-year-old daughter is, wow, my first and only wife, first and only daughter, and I'm sure you folks have been through it. And it's something. So I got a lot of challenges there. But I am a family man. I've been married for over 25 years. I really enjoy what I do. I like seeing things better. I've been known to go down and take down tattered American flags and replace them with new American flags. I've been known to volunteer to go out and repaint signs welcoming people to your community, you know, and I do volunteer a lot of things. I've been involved with civil service all my life in some way. I did get into the corporate life, my life with Kmart Corporation, and I'm going to tell you, I left Kmart and went into business for myself. And I tell you, I credit that with a lot of my successes because I am frugal. My wife says cheap, but I am frugal, and I like to make sure we're getting what we pay for. You know, and it's a lot of responsibility because you're handling the taxpayers' money and the public money, and there's a lot of public trust. I was a Boy Scout, and I'm proud to say that. I was in the Masonic organizations. I've been in junior achievement, so I was very involved with all youth programs, 4-H. I did them all. I sat on 4-H council for the county. I was a volunteer ambulance person. I worked for 2 ambulance services. I later became the leader of the ambulance service at a pretty young age. I clawed my way up through the corporate ladder and got that experience, and it was a very good experience. It also told me when to get out, so I got out. But then I got into government work, and I really love what I do. And it is a tough line between family responsibilities and family life and work life. It's tough to manage that, and my family has problems with it sometimes because I have a problem with it sometimes. Because I like to take time to explain things to people, and when people come in upset, I want to help people. You know, back in the day, they were bleeding or in a car accident. If they come in with a problem, I want to help them with a problem. I saw in the job description, that's one of the things, is help people with problems. And that's what we're here for, is, you know, and find a solution if possible, because you can't solve everybody's problems. But you can do your best to help them and try to help them understand what the problem is. Because some people think, oh, the government can just do this. There are great restrictions on what can be done with the public's money. I mean, there's some tough responsibilities there, and people think you folks can just cut a check for something, and you can't. And explain that to people, because times are tough right now for a lot of people. Some people are really doing great, some people are really hurting. But you try to do for both. And you want to take care of everybody. It doesn't matter if they live in a $1.5 million house or a $60,000 home. You know, you treat everybody equally, and everybody needs to be respected the same. And that's a big thing about this job, is respecting people and sharing that respect. And you do that with employees. I tell you, I felt like bringing in donuts this morning for the staff, because when I walked in and came around introducing myself the other day, because I was doing my homework, they were just wonderful. And they are just that friendly with everybody that comes through the door. And that's the way it should be. And you know, people, who wants to come in and pay their taxes? You know, that's tough for people, and it's tough for a lot of people right now. And they're coming in, and the greeter down there, she's just wonderful, and walks them over to the treasurer's office, and they pay their taxes, and it's just wonderful like that. Make it a good experience. I'm going to tell you, in Alpena, it was tough because we had a court in the building, and we had more security calls because of the treasurer's office than we did for the courts. So, yeah. And I'm going to tell you, I walked in down there, and it's very inviting here and welcoming. There are so many communities that have, since COVID, and they put up those plastic shields, a lot of people have transformed them over to bulletproof glass. And it's sad. But that's one thing about this. This community is set aside, has enough distance from some of those elements that, people, it's a great place to work. I mean, you look at the dogs downstairs and Rip. It's a great environment. You want to keep it that way. And I tell you what, the clerk was telling me that having the dogs there, people come in upset about something, and the dogs are rather calming, and that's great. And that's a thing. You want to make their experience here as pleasant as possible. So that's what I do. But I would love to serve this community because I see things that have happened recently, and I looked at the master plan, I see what's going to happen, and I love to help with that because I think you got some great plans. So do you have anything for me? You can go off script. I'll let you.
Well, if my wife heard everything you did, I think she would look at me thinking, wow, he's not as busy as I thought he was. And the dogs here, they're our therapy department. They're for the employees and people.
Well, I walked down the hall, and Jamie was in there with, looked like a sweater up over. I thought, wow, is there another baby in here? Yeah, she showed me her baby. I'm like, oh, geez, because, it is great therapy.
Yeah.
And you want a good work environment for all the employees, and that's what I want. So why wouldn't I want the employees to handle that? And I tell you, that's one thing. That's why there's a lot of employees sitting behind me. They're worried.
Yep.
I understand that. I understand that. But because I'm going to tell you, as we know, with change a lot of times comes with conflict. People can't accept change sometime, and you got to go on with, baby steps and explain yourself. I know you're not used to doing this. This is my idea. My theory, shoot some holes in it. Is my theory wrong? What works better here? Because what works here doesn't work in Pontiac, doesn't work in the UP. And that's the thing. And that's what the biggest challenge is again, learning the history here. And expound on any questions that was previously asked? Because I'm going to tell you what, I'm a pretty much an open book. Because I tell you, front page of the paper, where else do you get that? Usually, public officials and school superintendents and things like that. So,
No, I think I'm good.
well, you get early
you.
break.
Thank you.
There you go.
Jeez. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time you gave me. Like I said, this is
Thank you, Jim.
a tough decision folks need to make. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Hey,
Hey, yeah.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Oh, John's here. What? I don't think I opened the one.
I needed to 12 minutes. Take a drink.
I didn't have to look at
Good afternoon, Jeff. Thanks
Good
for coming
afternoon,
up. I'm Chuck Korn,
Yes?
Township Supervisor.
I'm Denise Schmuckel, trustee.
Molly Augustinelli, trustee.
Stephen Dool, trustee.
Chloe McCumber, treasurer.
Lady McManus, clerk.
Awesome.
And we would like to start off by giving you a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself,
Okay.
why you're interested in this position in this area.
Well, when I found out about this position is when Amy Sell's talent agency sent me an email. And my wife and I have been looking in this area on and off for possibly retiring up in this neck of the woods. And we camp up here every chance we can. We very much enjoy the area and the people up here. And when I got the email, I thought, oh my word. This is something I'm getting close to retirement age, but I'm not ready to retire. I thoroughly enjoy township government. I've worked for Cooper Township in one form of another solidly since 1986. I started as a fireman and was trained in the fire service and went from a fireman to assistant fire chief. In 2000, I was elected and stepped down from that position as assistant chief and went to a lieutenant and stayed that way till 2004 and have been continually elected as supervisor and until this day. And in 2008, I followed Gary Kramer onto the state MTA board and was brought on as the board how do I want to say, the member at large, and then worked my way up through the executive board. Was president for 2 years, 2019 and 20, because of this wonderful sickness that I have right now of COVID. And we weren't able to have an annual meeting, so served us 2 years, and being on the executive board, this is my last active year, and the annual meeting that we will have in April, well, then I will be done on that board and be just a past president that will not go to quarterly meetings anymore. And I will miss that. We've seriously called it family by choice. And when Amy, said coming in here, I said, these are people that I know and I consider family, every one of you here. And I really seriously am looking forward to having an opportunity to serve with you folks here in Garfield. When I first heard of a township manager's position years back and in Kalamazoo, I was thinking, why would anybody want to have a non-elected person? And then as I got an opportunity to work with several down in Kalamazoo, such as Kalamazoo Township and Texas Township and Comstock Township, it made sense. And when I was reading why you decided to go to a manager's position, it solidified what I realized. You don't want to have somebody come in with an axe to grind that has a good name in your community and stifle your progress. You want to be able to not have somebody get elected out of office that's doing a good job. And I have had opposition every single time except one, my second term in office. That is exactly what they try to do with us at Cooper, and it really gets to be tough. This year I have one of my board members that has not gotten along well, but he is making an attempt to take over the progress that we've been making over all the years. And that even made it more so that I would really like to get into a manager's position into an area that I think is beautiful and well run. And I've been doing a lot of reading on you guys are, I believe, going over your master plan as we speak. And I just acquired a $50,000 grant from MISTA to do a deep dive into our master plan and how we can make it better for housing on non-conforming lots and how we can make those conforming so we can get affordable housing into our township as well, and how we can fix up homes. There's another step for $250,000 that we can go for to help economically disadvantaged people fix up their homes too. And I don't know how that would relate to Garfield Township, but there's definitely money available to help your neighborhoods, and I would want to go for that as well. So And building relationships with the cities and villages and townships has been one of my strong points. We had a PFAS problem in Cooper Township. We got the city of Kalamazoo hooked up 578 homes in Cooper at no charge to the people. We were able to get drinking water revolving fund money, and we were also able to get a 40-year contract with the city of Kalamazoo. We equaled water rates with the city of Kalamazoo and all townships, not just Cooper, but all townships. And we're so close on getting that same thing done with the sewer contract as we speak. And I chair that committee with the townships and the city right now too. So, and there's so many other cooperations that I could go over if there's time. So,
Very good. Can you describe the role of a township manager and how it would work with the Board of Trustees?
well, I think as a full-time supervisor, you have to work as a team, and you have to work very closely with your clerk and your treasurer, and the board would be the manager's boss, and you are working for the board. It's different as a supervisor working with the board. You don't have that one vote on a 7-member board that you would be as a supervisor. The board is your boss, and you do what the board, you work for the board's pleasure, and you don't work for the township's pleasure. You work for the board's pleasure and do the board's work as they expect you to do, and do their goals and make sure you accomplish those goals.
What is your communication style, and how will it ensure that there is a free flow of information to the Board of Trustees?
I think communication, I think emails and personal communication and voice communication, written email communications are very important. If there's a lack of communication, that's where there's a breakdown, and I think that communication is the most important word in any language in the world. If there is a lack of communication, that's where things get mixed up, that's where things go awry. I think there has to be an open line of communication on all aspects. Trustees are no less important than the clerk and the treasurer. Everybody has to be communicated the same.
Describe your experiences recruiting and onboarding new staff members.
Oh, man, that can be a fun one. And we right now are, we've been very blessed with a very good office staff for many years at Cooper Township. And recently we've been looking through temp agencies and have gone through several that we were looking for a full-time person. And through the temp agency, it was really easy to see what younger people's work ethic is and isn't, and how they come to work, and actually how they're dressed if they come in at 2 minutes to 8, and are they ready to work? If they come in at 10 minutes to 8 or quarter to, and if they're ready to work and got their computers fired up and ready to work, and if they're shutting things down at 4 o'clock, well, that's when our hours go, 8 to 4, and are they wasting time, or are they being productive? And are they using their phones? Are they for personal business? Are they shopping on the computer? Are they working? And are they asking for work? Are they doing are they being productive and getting things done? And I think how they communicate with each other too. Do they get along with others? I think that's all important too.
Okay, what are some of the most important factors to consider when managing growth?
Oh, wow, that's a large one right there. I always hate to hear the word sometimes smart growth, because it depends on whether you're looking at residential growth, whether you're looking at industrial growth, or whether you're looking at commercial growth. I mean, it has to be managed in a way that everything has to fit, and sometimes things just don't fit. If you're looking at growth in your community, you want to make sure that your zoning works. You don't want to spot zone something. You want to make sure that you're not going to stick a commercial entity in the middle of a residential zone or industrial inside of a commercial zone, that you have to be cognizant of what's looking to go where, I guess. And I guess I could probably know if there was a particular incident, I could probably expound on it, but I think you have to be careful of how you're looking at what growth, what type of growth in what area.
Please describe your leadership style.
I think I try and be a very good observantist and a very good listener. I try and listen, and here I am doing all the talking at the moment, but I try and listen to people to see what makes them tick, and not everybody works the same way. Some people have an issue with something or somebody that may be bothering them that day. I try and get into people's head a little bit to see what makes them tick. And I try not to be critical of anybody until I get to know somebody. And a person may have something that is bothering them, and they may be a very good person at what they do, but I want to get to know the person a little bit before I get critical, or I want to know their job as well as I can before I get critical of why something isn't getting done right. And so nobody's perfect in this world, and I think we have to get to know the person and get to know their job before we say, hey, this isn't going well. How do we fix it as a team? And work with the person, and before you go and try and reprimand somebody, figure out what the problem is, and then try and fix it. And if you can't be fixed over time, then you have to do something about it.
Thank you.
Describe your level of experience with finance and accounting.
As far as I can keep a checkbook and I can balance. As far as budgeting, I've worked with the clerk and the treasurer on our budget very extensively, and I monitor it monthly. And as far as doing the books, probably not what it could be or should be at this point. I'll be very honest with you on that. And but it's something that I could grow with, absolutely.
This will be a difficult one for you. Have you stayed current in municipal best practices?
Absolutely, as much as possible, you bet. Absolutely. All the Gatsby's and everything that we can, yes. And meet with the auditors as well as with the clerk and the treasurer to make sure that we are up to date on everything, and also with zoning. And we have a zoning administrator that I meet with weekly, and so yes.
Can you provide an example where you needed to gather input from different stakeholders and different perspectives?
Yeah, there's probably several different topics on that. Water and sewer. I mentioned the PFAS issue that we had. Different stakeholders that were on that are people that had wells that, or actually were on city water, the parchment system that was drawing PFAS contaminated water that had to be discontinued immediately. And so how did we do that? One, the city of Kalamazoo had, their system was in 3 places very close to the parchment system. And we met with the Public Services Director, James Baker, and within 72 hours, we met with our Public Works, our city manager, and there was never a thought of who's going to pay for it, how's it going to get done. They had their water tower and their system flushed out within 72 hours of all the contaminated water, and one leg of their system hooked into the Kalamazoo City system within 72 hours, and then within a week they were all hooked into Kalamazoo City water. that was, the stakeholders were the city of Kalamazoo, citizens of Cooper, and the citizens of city of Parchment. And nobody went to who's gonna pay for it, how's it gonna be, there was no parochialism whatsoever. And that was something that I've been spearheading over the years. And how I did that is we had a county chapter of supervisors and MTA. And what we would do is 15 years ago, I started a golf outing. And we had an annual banquet. We invited all elected and appointed officials, and we had over 100 people come to each one. We played together, we ate together, we got speakers that would come to the banquet, and we played together and had prizes and everything, and we got to know each other. So there was never a problem there. So then when we put sewer in the same way, and we had a sewer project